Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology. This first chapter is an introduction with a lot of new terms. First of all, a few tips on how to succeed. When this says approach the information in different ways, possibly it means that you could read it aloud, you could study with groups, you can watch videos. Don't just count on reading quietly in a room. You want to make it an active session, not a passive session. You want to set up specific times every day. This is a 5-credit class, and you want to devote an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. You need to practice memorization. There are no shortcuts in anatomy. You have to go through all of the material, look at all the pictures, captions, labels. You need to be active in your school and attending all sessions. I'm not sure about reading assignments before coming to class. That's up to you, but definitely don't procrastinate. You cannot cram for these exams. There's far too much material. Studying means taking in bits of the material over and over and over again. It doesn't mean sitting down for 2 hours straight and reading. It means studying actively for 20 minutes without your phone interrupting you, with good focus, taking notes, being there, being in the moment, and then getting up and taking a break and doing that multiple times a day. And if you see that you're having trouble, and you'll see that at the very first test, speak to your instructor, me, for some assistance right away. So anatomy is the study of structure. And so here we have a structure of a heart. There are two types of anatomy. There's gross anatomy, where you see the entire structure with your naked eyes. And there's microscopic anatomy. You would need a microscope to see microscopic anatomy. Most anatomy labs use what is called a compound light microscope. These are student microscopes that are used to see the tissues. Electron microscopes are pretty expensive. You'll see pictures from electron microscopes in your textbook, but we do not use that in labs. Here's the gross anatomy of a heart. You can see the heart with your naked eye. And here's the tissue, which is microscopic anatomy. Of course, there's a link between the structure and the function, but this link has not always been known. For example, when they first saw hearts, which they would see with dissections or accidents, that sort of thing, they had no clue as to the function of the heart. 200 years passed before we understood that the heart is merely a pump and pushing the blood throughout the body. Physiology is function, and it's definitely more difficult than structure. Examples of physiology: electrical events within the heart, coordinating the heartbeat that can be measured with an ECG. And so these graphs show pressure changes in the heart as well as the ECG. And you can see this is a little bit more complex than identifying tissues. In this module, you will want to be able to define anatomy, the study of structure, and physiology, the study of function. Know the differences between gross anatomy, that is anatomy you can see with the naked eye, and microscopic anatomy, which would require a microscope, and understanding the link between anatomy, structure, and physiology, function. This form and function are very closely interrelated. And so we look in great detail at structures because that's the only way you can understand the function, is by understanding the structure. For example, our elbow acts like a hinge. You can only move it. You can flex your elbow or you can extend your elbow. And this is because it has a specific structure. And with that structure, you can kind of see that the bone here, the rounded bone here, fits into a cavity that allows it to rotate only so far. So this bone, the humerus, can only rotate so far. Well, actually, here your forearm is doing the rotating. The humerus is staying in place. But this can only rotate so far. It's called a hinge joint. It kind of acts like the hinge on a box and only allows specific movement. Now, the human body, all bodies are organized, and you have to know those different levels of the organization. The first level is the chemical or molecular level. Atoms combine to form molecules. An example of a molecule is water or glucose. And these molecules are three-dimensional. They take up space. The next level, the smallest living level, is the cellular level. The cell is filled with what are called tiny organs called organelles. They have very specific functions. One organelle, the lysosome, breaks down particles in the cell. The mitochondria makes ATP for energy. When cells combine, that is, cells that are similar and have the same function combined, they form a tissue. For example, cardiac muscle cells combine to form heart tissue. When tissues are combined, we get to a higher level of organization called the organ level. So the cardiac muscle tissue is not the only type of tissue in the heart. It combines with a variety of different connective tissues to form the heart. So the heart is made of connective tissue and cardiac muscle tissue, two kinds of tissue. So it is at the organ level. Above the organ level is the organ system. There are 11 different organ systems, for example, cardiovascular. And organ systems combine to form the organism. And here you can see visually the level of organization that you need to know. Can you answer what is the correct level of organization? I hope you are able to answer D. Organs are composed of more than one tissue type. Organ systems combine a variety of organs to form a function. And these are the 11 major organ systems. So, what does the integumentary system do? It is the skin, and it protects the body from environmental hazards. It controls body temperature. What about the skeletal system? It supports, it protects soft tissue, stores minerals, and forms blood cells. How about the muscular system? It moves and supports the body and produces heat. The nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord and surrounding nerves, and it directs immediate responses to stimuli. It coordinates the organ systems quickly. You may not know the endocrine system. It is a series of glands that also coordinate. They direct long-term changes in activities of other organ systems using hormones. Examples would be, you can see those red kidneys there, the two red kidneys. On top of the kidneys are the adrenal glands. Just above the belly button is the pancreas. I'm sure you know what the cardiovascular system is made of and does. It's made of the heart and veins and arteries and other blood vessels, and it transports. It's going to transport nutrients, wastes, gases, cells, antibodies, hormones, everything the body needs. Now, we don't have red and blue blood vessels, but in the textbook it shows red blood vessels when it is carrying oxygenated blood. That is, the red blood cells are filled with oxygen. And when that oxygen is depleted, it shows as blue veins. The one body system that most students have not heard of or know very little about is the lymphatic system. It defends against infection and disease, but it also does something else. As our blood travels through our body, the capillaries are a bit leaky, and fluids, the plasma, leak out into the tissue. Well, that plasma has to be returned back to the bloodstream, and it is the lymphatic system that does that. You may be aware of lymph nodes in your neck that enlarge when you're sick. That shows you that they are fighting disease. The respiratory system, composed of the lungs and all of the transporting passageways, such as the trachea and bronchioles and bronchi. This system will deliver oxygen into the body and exchange it with CO2. The digestive system is complex. It has a lot of organs. Two organs that people are not aware of that belong to the digestive system is the liver and the pancreas. So this system will process the food that we take in, break it into smaller pieces by chewing it, and then further break it down using enzymes to the smallest level, which would be glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, so that those smaller particles can get into our cells. This is the esophagus, which goes into the stomach. From the stomach, the food will go into the small intestine and then the large intestine. Feces will be stored in the rectum and exit the body through the anus. This is the liver, which makes bile that is stored underneath the liver in the green gallbladder, and that helps break down fats. Kind of hiding behind that stomach there is the pancreas. The urinary system filters the blood multiple times a day and removes excess water, salts, and wastes such as urea and uric acid, and it controls pH. And I'm sure you know the urinary system is made up of the kidneys. From the kidneys, the urine drains down the ureters. There are two ureters. Some people call them ureters, and that urine goes to the urinary bladder where it is stored and then exits the body by way of the urethra. And finally, the reproductive system, which produces sex cells, that would be eggs and sperm, as well as hormones. So you need to know the main function of each of your organ systems, as well as some of the main organs in each system. And that's a good introduction to anatomy and physiology.